Content warning for mentions of death, trauma, and villainization.
Hi, Neuro Clan. So, as you know, October is Mental Health Awareness Month. For that, we are doing a series of interviews, chats with some of our members that particularly live under the mental health umbrella of neurodivergencies. I am so happy today to have Daniela. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I am Daniella Bella, aka Daniella Lily. Um, and I live with dissociative identity disorder, and I also have PTSD, and I am a disabled artist and writer and organizer, and I was one of the founding members of Individuality. I worked on DID Ireland, um, and with Cír at one point. And I write some comics, both slice of life and sort of um, autobiographical, as well as some fiction stuff, um, which is more adult and romance themed. And I recently published a short story called Kiribati Rising, which is about the island nation of Kiribati and how it comes in the future to be a neighbor of Ireland in the wake of climate change, sea level rise. Sci-fi as well. Um, and yeah, so that's me, I guess.
An all-round amazing person.
Oh,
Um, but so yes, um, DID and PTSD. For those of our viewers who aren't as familiar with those terms, would you like to give an overview?
yeah, so with DID, basically the way that I understand it, is there are those who experience often extreme trauma, and that trauma can lead to basically a rejection of the self and kind of starting over from scratch, where a person experiences a hard trauma and goes, okay, need to start over with the whole personality thing. And then you build another one. And then you might keep running into the same problem and you just keep restarting. And so you end up building self beside self beside self beside self, because you can't get rid of what was there before. And so these selves trying to make sense of the world, often in early childhood when you have no real tools to work out, you're basically going, you're just trying to find a way to survive, and like a version of yourself who can survive the situations you're being put in. And sometimes one will be useful for one situation but not another, one will be useful for another situation but not another, and so on. And so they can kind of independently develop, um, and that can lead to stuff like memory issues. And so like one self, or one alter, depending on how you use the terms, it's kind of a complicated mess of language. But so one alter, it might be able to sorry, lost my train of thought. But so yeah, one alter might remember the things that they were around for, but another author wouldn't remember that. And so you have this sort of patchwork of memories and emotions. Like for me, I have authors who more strongly hold joy, and authors who more have generally held my sadness and anger. And so, and the personality that the author that I am trying to that most people tend to know most of the time is an author that has very little emotional capacity in general. And I tend to keep the emotions away from me in the other authors. But it is something I'm very much working on, so I'm connecting more to that, to those emotions a little bit more now. But there's kind of a trade-off. By connecting back up, there might be coping mechanisms that one author has that another doesn't have, and and but they might clash with each other. So one author I have will completely shut down, and another author will lash out, and these two things kind of fight each other if they start coming into contact with each other. Me, that like the author that I'm projecting now is an author who will try and will always look for the way to fawn over the person that I'm with, which is a response to trauma, where I'm always looking for the way to make this situation the safest it can be for us. And so that's my response to the constant sense of trauma that I have, where I'm just like, okay, if I give this person what they want and what they need, um, they will become something that I don't have to worry about. And that can kind of clash with like lashing out from another author, and so that's really hard. So yeah, so that's kind of what DID is, and with PTSD, it kind of overlaps a little bit. You have you the traumas create an ability, like a lot of like kind of forced loops in your head that are reliving traumatic events. And a traumatic event is basically when your personal narrative gets interrupted. So when your personal narrative gets interrupted and the story no longer makes sense in your head, you can kind of get stuck on particular moments emotionally, or in terms of like almost like a memory playing like a movie, or like a feeling replaying in your body, and that kind of thing. And there can be a lot of interpersonal difficulties because of that in what's known as complex post-traumatic stress disorder, sometimes called borderline personality disorder, or emotionally unstable personality disorder. But it's complicated. It's just politics. Just yeah. So yeah, that's basically what PTSD and DID are.
Thank you for explaining that. And I suppose you gave us an idea of what DID looks like for you.
Yeah.
But what about your PTSD? How does that manifest itself, so to speak? If you're comfortable sharing, of course.
Yeah, of course. So for example, I have traumatic memories that are quite linked to sensory information that I'm getting. So like on a particularly sunny day, the sun shining through the window, my brain interprets that sun shining through the window as a trigger in order to send me back to a sense memory or a full-blown almost movie of the times when that meant danger. And so then I start to like, it can start like very much in like just the senses of my body, like feeling things that I felt at that time, and uh maybe even smelling something, the sense of like the cold or something that I was touching. And so I like, I'm not there, but from my point of view, my body's like, yes, I am there. And there's like, you're kind of like trying to fight these two very real seeming things. And sometimes that leads to lashing out, or like any of the responses I talked about, like fawning, fighting, freezing, or fleeing, flight, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, are the typical responses to it. And so all of my alters have their own particular responses to our traumas. And so there's sometimes like a fight in the body for which one we're trying to respond with. So
Yeah, I get you. I think uh, PTSD is so high within the neurodivergent community, and it is something that isn't as well understood. I think from like a lot of people dismiss the things that they're feeling as if this type of way.
yeah,
We have a very, like a lot of the mental health neurodivergencies, we have a very TV image of what PTSD looks like. You think of all the war movies and all this stuff. Um, but it can be very, from personal experience, it can be very confusing, so to speak, in that moment of, oh God, which reality am I actually in?
yeah,
Very disorientating.
yeah. And I think because we're so used to, because we have this filter of PTSD that we look through, that because the perfect masculine version of PTSD is a war movie, or somebody fighting for their life in World War II or something, like we tend to not necessarily understand. And like for a long time it wasn't even like possible to get a diagnosis of PTSD, or what it was before, shell shock, because of where the diagnosis kind of came to the fore with war, in modern times at least. Like it wasn't possible to get a diagnosis for survivors of like more interpersonal traumas, or um, stuff that wasn't necessarily life threatening, but it was threatening to your identity, um, or just like extreme horrors that happen to you that aren't like you're going to die, but you are going to get hurt in some way. And I think it's very hard for those of us who are neurodivergent, like even especially women and non-binary people and people who've experienced um, gendered marginalization, um, to really talk about, to really like think about the things that we've experienced, like being forced to experience ongoing like sensory overload. Like it's very hard for us to even like say that was enough to give us PTSD, but it the extremes in our bodies, it doesn't. What my friend says, it's we all experience our worst day at the same volume. Like it's always the it's always too much. Like that volume that our worst experiences are at is always too much, and it doesn't matter whether your too much was a war, or your or it was something that happened to you in school, like it's still too much, and that's just how our bodies interpret it.
True. I just want to take this moment
Yeah.
to acknowledge to all of our viewers out there that we understand that this is a really difficult topic, and we're both big advocates of self-care. Not always great at taking our own advices, but we will always advocate it for others. So if at any stage you need to pause this video, you need to walk away, or if you need to just stop and not return to it, that's totally okay. These are hard topics. They're conversations that have to happen. But if they're too much for you right now, there is no shame in turning off this video. But yes. Is there anything that you have learned about, whether that's DID or PTSD, that has shocked you once you realized?
Yeah, I mean, with DID, I think that the thing that shocked me most was that I have it, because the way that it's portrayed in on TV or in films is always at these real extremes, like you're a normal person and also a murderer. And so you're kind of like the only mirror that I have, especially as someone who's like, neurodivergent in other ways, is that's how I like make models of the world. I didn't really have something that I could go, okay, that's me, for a very long time. And so like I would sometimes like notice that I wasn't living with just one alter. So someone would say to me, "You're not the same person that you were a minute ago," and I'm like, "I was here a minute ago," um, and like it can be very hard to actually get to the point where you understand that what you're experiencing is what you're experiencing, because it's also just like such a stigmatized thing, and there's a lot in the mental health profession, there's a lot of people who disbelieve that it actually exists. And we're only kind of getting to the point of starting to understand dissociation as a concept now. It's like we're still at the very beginning stages of trying to understand what it does to the brain, how it works, especially in women and in trans people and so on. And we're not, we, it can be very hard to believe yourself when there's like nobody who's telling you it's okay to believe yourself. And so it was quite shocking for me to like actually say, okay, I'm not alone in here. Um, like that, like actually getting to that point took a very long time. Um, and then I like learned that not everyone who experiences what's known as plurality, like the having lots of alters or selves or whatever a person will call them, um, they not everyone who experiences that also experiences DID, which is when the cells have separate memory systems and have uh, a difficult time functioning together and have separate, like very hard separations between them, like I have. Like some people experience plurality without the memory discrepancies and stuff like that. So like there's a lot of complex language around it, and trying not to exclude anyone, and like trying not to be like this to talk as if we're all one big thing. Like that's very difficult at times. Like I can only really talk about what my experience is like, and like the experiences of my friends a little bit, and the experiences of people I've read about. But I can't there's just such a wide diversity of how people are people. And that goes for people who experience DID or just plurality without DID.
I think it's very important for us all to remember. It can be hard, like, especially as activists and stuff like this, because fortunately the policymakers don't see it that way, just like way. And how do we balance that of respecting everybody's lived experience is going to be different for a multitude of reasons, whether that is your gender, your race, your social economic status, whatever, while also giving the policymakers the language they need to go about policies. But I appreciate you taking the time to explain to us what this means for you, for your lived experience.
Okay.
Is there anything you wish people knew?
Yeah, I mean, I wish people knew that we're not that experiencing this doesn't make someone a monster. I feel like it's so easy to even see the more extreme alters, like the alters who lash out, or the alters who are childlike, or the alters who are unusual. It's very easy to see them as something dangerous because that's all we ever see it as. Like on TV, like you'll see somebody who needs to be contained because at any moment they could become a murderer, like for the most part just norm we're all just people. And even those alters who seem extreme, all they need is love. Like it took me a long time to not see my alters as enemies, like because like when somebody is always just on that edge of lashing out or on the edge of embarrassing you because they're so different, like it can be hard to see them as people. Even for me, like it was a process of me getting to the point where I'm like, oh, when you're lashing out, you're not actually trying to hurt anyone. What you're actually trying to do is try and say, I'm in extreme distress, I'm in extreme pain, and I need someone to help, or I need to be left alone, or I need care, and I had to kind of decide, and we all decided that we would love each other, and that would be like a first step towards giving all of us that kind of love that we all need and deserve. Because no matter how much somebody lashes out, they are still deserving of love. Like even someone who's harmed is deserving of love. And if you ever have harmed someone, you know how much you can regret it. And like it's definitely something so we kind of we kind of focus on quite hard about like harm and what it means to be a person who's harmed somebody, and what we do about that, because we know what it's like to have done harm, even if it's like just like I've shouted at somebody, or I've made someone uncomfortable by accident, like so being able to like humanize what a person who does harm is just so important when you have a mental health condition that's stigmatized and also difficult.
Yeah, yes. And uh as your friend. I am very grateful that you treat yourself with that compassion and that you have all decided to live comfortably enough with each other. So learn to live comfortably with each other. I am very grateful for that. But I think the media is very damaging for a lot of the mental health stuff. Anybody who knows me will probably be fed up with me saying the words that we shouldn't villainize neurotypes, but it is something I am very passionate about. It vexes me to no end that people find it appropriate to villainize an entire group of people purely due to their neurodivergency. And we are getting more, as a society, we are getting more and more acceptance of some neurodivergencies. Like, I think most people would agree that that's not okay to, like, say hate speech against autistic people as a whole. And yet, when it comes to the mental health stuff, especially those more marginalized mental health stuff, it's still quite villainized and still quite okay to villainize it. So I, for one, am very grateful to any creator, yourself included, that publishes work that shows uh, multifacetedness, wonderfulness that can be our brains.
Yeah, like it's just so important to me in everything that I make to humanize and to kind of grow empathy or hold up a mirror to experiences that people might not get to see, you know? It's I'd never want to make something that would ever show somebody in a less than human light, because to we all deserve the moments when we are seen to be moments when we we can be seen, like genuinely seen. And so often especially like when you're autistic, like when everything you're seeing is of the you as viewed through the lens of a parent who's struggling, or through the lens of like almost seeing you as less than. Like it's very hard to ever see yourself as more than that. And yeah, we deserve that. We deserve to see each other.
And in that idea of seeing each other and meeting each other where we're at. And I'm totally aware that we are all different. Things that work for you won't work for others and vice versa. But how could your loved ones support you?
One of the most important things to me is, since I have really come out about living with DID, the friends who have made an effort to learn and to not shy away from what I'm saying and not try and push it into like what I see as normal, um like I have friends who've like given myself and each of my authors birthday cards. I've had friends who, they check in, see who they're talking to when they see me, and that's been so great for letting each of my alters and me actually know that there's safety out there, and that there isn't, not every moment when we exist has to be awful, and we don't have to be hidden, and just knowing you don't have to hide is really important. It can be one of the, I've been working recently towards integration of all of our authors, and we haven't gotten to a point where we're one person, but we have been sharing emotions more and trying not to like push each other down, and trying to let each other have our emotions. And like, it's so important having people around us who aren't saying like, any of these alters needs to go away. Like, if they're there, they're there, and that's okay, and I'm their friend too. Like, each of us has friends now, and that's kind of wild to us. And being able to be a little bit a little bit Lily, a little bit Emily, a little bit Danny, like at the same time as being me, like that's helping us to come together and share more and get closer to each other. And like, I don't think the goal with DID has to be to integrate. I And that's one kind of thing that kind of annoys me a little bit. Like, nobody has to become the most, you know, nobody has to become the most mentally well version of themselves in order to be accepted and loved. If I ever get to the point where we're fully integrated, then I think that would be awesome, because it's what I'm currently looking towards. But if we don't get there too, that will be awesome too, because we'll have a we have a better sense of what we want, and we can't really get there without the space to do that kind of exploration.
Yeah, I get you. I think honestly, when you started talking about like people accepting all of you, my first thought was, I remember how excited you were the first time you got a card with everyone's name on it. You put such a happy post up. I was delighted that day just to see the joy.
I'm pretty sure we cried, so it was pretty amazing.
That's fair. There's an incredible power in being accepted. Incredible power. And I think my next question that I had lined up for you, if you're okay with that, is how could the wider society support um people that live with DID or PTSD?
Yeah, um, I think a society that accepts a society where there isn't an expectation that causing causing harm or being odd makes you a bad person. I I think a society where a person can't have a bad day without having that follow them for the rest of their life is a society that's not safe for people who are mentally well, who are mentally uh, divergent. Um, because I think because I've had really bad days, and I've been back in bad memories, and I've not I've not been my best self, and the ways that that's followed us, and the ways that like you get when somebody does a bad thing, like shout at somebody, the ways that that can follow you, like just even in your own head, is it's so damaging to people. The idea that nobody can ever be better and that nobody can have a good day if they've ever had a bad day is so damaging to people who experience mental distress or who have a flashback and they're maybe fighting for their lives, but nobody else can see it. Like those bad days don't make you a bad person. They're just bad days, and the more people who can see that, I think, the better.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really helped me on my journey through my PTSD and BPD and stuff like that was one of my therapists. I hate, that whole thing of like, oh, do your best and it'll be okay. Like it doesn't matter
Yeah,
what you do. And yeah, I hate that. I cannot stand it. And one of my therapists who I absolutely adored, he reframed it for me of even if it's just in my own head when people are saying it, of like my best on any given day is going to be different. Like
yeah,
I'm still going to be doing my best.
yeah.
Yeah, and that for me was huge. And it sounds so simplistic when I'm saying it, but I don't think that's what society gives us a lot of the time. Like if we think in a very simplistic terms, go back to the schooling system. Um, if you're used to getting A's and you're sick for a few weeks, the teachers still expect those A's out of you, this type of way. Um,
Yeah.
even though I could be doing my absolute best for that given circumstance. And they would tell you you're not giving it your all, you're not giving it your best. So that reframing for me was so powerful. Like, even my
Yeah,
bad days are me trying my best on that day, you know?
yeah, and like even if you're not trying your best, like if you're trying your worst, like that, you're still trying.
We're
So
all here. We're here. And for so many of us, being here is an achievement within itself.
survival is a little miracle.
Yeah. And that's not to shame anybody who's not here with us, but
No,
that's just to acknowledge so many of us don't expect, whether that's because of our disability or because of our mental health or because of the instability of politics out there. So many of
yeah,
us don't give the future as a given. So to just exist is enough.
it really is, and we don't we don't make the future easier for each other by trying to punish us for the days when we are at our least best. Like we don't
Yeah.
we we keep giving to each other, I think, in expectation that one day we'll have another best day, and in expectation that maybe tomorrow will be a little easier and we will get to be a little kinder to each other. And there's an awful lot that we can do for each other to make those days more possible. And when those days aren't possible, we can show each other kindness.
And I think it leads me on very well to the next question, which was, how do you support yourself, all of your wonderful selves?
One of the things that I'm really working on is making sure that all of my authors have time for their own interests, and I think my therapist calls it uh, active rest. Um, the idea that not only do you have to like relax the body, but you kind of have to relax the mind by doing the things that actually interest you and the things that are important to you. And so I have to make sure that my youngest seeming alter Lily has time to play, and that my other alters have time for like the music that they like and like the TV that they like, and it is a lot to make sure we get as much of that in as possible. But um all of the me's have their own stuff that they deserve to get to to live to do with their lives, and that's one way we do it. I think just every day being as kind as we can about things that we need in the future and things that we've experienced in the past, and just never forgetting that just surviving to this point was a struggle, and we we're gonna keep doing that, so we need to keep being kind.
Yeah. Good goals to have. And
I think so.
I think there is value in that for everyone, regardless of your neurotype, your whatever. Just taking time for yourself is so important. Taking time to engage in things that refill your cup, so to speak. Especially in this type of capitalist society we live in, there's a lot of shame around taking time to relax, but it is important. I'm really grateful for the conversation, as always. I think Neuro Pride Ireland is so lucky to have so many members. Everybody has an important story to tell, and everybody has um, things worth saying. But we are so lucky to have people who are willing to share their stories and willing to share their expertise and their knowledge. And I am so grateful to you for taking the time to do that. But before I end this, I just wanted to ask you, is there anything else you wanted to say? Is there anything you wanted to bring up? Or
I really appreciate everything you're doing with Neuro Pride Ireland. It's really, really great. And I know we all have a lot of struggle ahead of us, like as a community, but we having people like you and your other team members and having each other in general, I think is going to serve us really well in being able to fight some of the things we need to fight.
if anybody is interested in learning more about DID, is there any resources you find particularly helpful that put them in the direction of?
Um, yeah, there is, what are they called? Uh, Let me just try and
Yeah,
find the name.
you go for it. And
Um,
Daniella Bella done an amazing comic, which is on the Neuro Pride socials for DID Awareness Day. If you search that, you'll see that amazing comic.
yeah, the Plural Association have some really great resources, um, including information and like the different language that people use and the different ways of being plural. They have some really great resources on their website.
Amazing. Thank you. I will put all those links down in the comments. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Daniella, for talking to us. If, as we were saying, community is so important. If you happen to be watching this and you are not already a member of Neuro Pride Ireland, all neurodivergent adults are welcome to join our Facebook group, Neuro Pride Ireland Community. All adults, regardless of neurotype, are allowed to join Neuro Pride Ireland supporters group. And we have so many events over on Eventbrite, whether you're a neurodivergent adult or you have children, we always have something going on. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you again. And Slán.
Slán.